Good morning, everybody. It's the Pocket Moggers. How you doing? It is just about midnight right where I am recording, so it is literally the morning. And I just wanted to bring y'all a video briefly about the 5 best regions to see in the Pokemon world. There are so many, many more, and they all have their merits, but these are the 5 that I think are the best, and the ones that if you were to play a Pokemon game of some sort, these are the regions that I would want a new player to explore and try out for themselves. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, the ground rules that I have chosen for my grading rubric when I am looking at these regions is I selected the 5 and then took the top scoring 5 based on this rubric, and the rubric's points are uniqueness and accessibility of Pokemon species, both from the region and outside of it, cultural landmarks, fun areas to visit, lore. How alive does the world feel given what you're doing in it? Post game content slash reasons to stay after the credits. That's a huge one for me. I'm so sick and tired of video games just offering you nothing after the credits. Now, given the investment and the time that you put into those things, there really should be something. There's no reason not to do that. Regional gimmick gameplay mechanics from the generation, were they fun? Were they intrusive? Did they actually feel like they contributed something to the game? Were they so passive that you didn't even know they were there? What would you how do you feel about the gimmick? There we go. And then aesthetics, is the region, excuse me, fun to look at and to explore? Most of them are both of those things. Not all of them, but most of them are both of those things, but to varying degrees, right? So I wanted to keep that in mind. If any of the top 5 regions score the same, a Mogoff will be needed to determine which is best. This is one of those videos, as a matter of fact. We've got 2 that are tied right in the middle here, and we're going to see who comes out on top. With all of that out of the way, let's get going. So my number 5 choice here is the Alola region from Pokemon Sun and Moon and Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Alola gets a 3 out of 5 when all of the points are added up and tallied properly, etc. You know what I mean? I'm so sorry. My cat came over to me, started asking me for some pets. But one of the big things I like about Alola, the region has a lot to do. The uniqueness of the trials instead of gyms, bosses in the forms of totem Pokemon, the surprising secondary depth to Z moves. I know a lot of people see the Z moves as the press the big button and blow everybody up mechanic, and it is that. But passive moves, your status moves, can also gain effects from Z moves, and those are really wonky. There's actually some pretty fun stuff that you can do with those. I prefer to use that instead of the Big Bang attack, if you will, version of the Z moves. There are unfortunately not a lot of NPCs outside of the battle tree, which is the battle tower equivalent, that really make use of the Z moves in interesting ways. But that can be forgiven. The story mode, the base game, is supposed to be for younger audiences, and they would more than likely not be able to understand the true depths of the mechanic anyway, right? Having said that, there's one thing I would like to say to its negative. Well, a couple of things, and then I'd like to bring it up with another positive. I like to do the sandwich approach. I don't know how many of you have, worked like managerial positions and stuff like that, but I've been a manager a couple of times, and I really like the compliment sandwich. You know what I mean? It doesn't. It you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or I never wanted to hurt anybody's feelings, right? Because for me it was never personal unless somebody got hurt, right? So I wanted them to know that, hey, just because I'm pointing out a bad thing doesn't mean I don't realize you're doing good stuff too, right? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to try that approach with this too. Okay. Having said that, man, there's really not much to do in the post game here. There's little things to do. There are side quests and plots and things that you can handle in the post game, but nothing long term. You know what I mean? Just a couple of things. There are daily events that you can do that are really fun. I enjoyed doing the fake gym challenge. That was always fun. There's a character who is enamored with the Kanto region and Kanto gyms. In hindsight, very clearly warning us about the Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. I guess for them it was a tease, but for me it was more of a warning, like, you're going back to Kanto whether you like it or not, right? But they wanted us to get that experience, so they recreated the Vermilion Gym as a daily battle thing that you can do, and that's really cool. Don't get me wrong, but it's not a Battlefront here. You know what I mean? It's not a post-game story mode like you get in some of these games where you get to go out into the world and look for people or help people finish a quest, or you know what I mean? And there are a couple of them in Alola, but they're not long term, right? The other thing that I do have to say is Alola is visually appealing. It's beautiful, one of the prettiest regions that we've ever had. Excuse me, that one was a burp. But it's just not very complex. You know what I mean? It's not the thinking man's region, right? You usually just, oh, I didn't find this thing. Well, did you try going left instead of going right? Oh, no, I didn't. There it is, right? And that's kind of a pity, especially for a region as rich and beautiful in the real world as Hawaii is, right? I have some friends who live on Molokai, and I have seen pictures, and my gosh, I wish I could go out there myself. But it's a wonderful place with so much to do, and Alola compared to Hawaii is kind of a little, I don't know. It's a little lacking. But I do need to finish this on a positive and say that the characters are some of the best that Pokemon has made. The Lily family story is very compelling. Guzma is a great villain. Although I wish there was a little more payoff. I like him. I like him better as a villain in Sun and Moon, but I like him better as a character in the Ultra games when he helps you out with Team Rainbow Rocket and all of that stuff. That, by the way, while I bring that up, while we're on compliments here, Team Rainbow Rocket is awesome. Really, really, really cool. I love it. It comes a little bit too much out of left field, I think. I think that there could have been a little more preamble to it. I think Rainbow Rocket could have very easily just been the villains of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and had a climax in the post game, right? You stop them from taking Necrozma and they go into hiding, and then they show up again later. I think that would have been a better anniversary thing, which is what they were going for, than just having them kind of show up out of nowhere, but it still works. And it's a lot of fun. That's the biggest thing that you get for a post game in any of these games, and it is great. Don't get me wrong. Hunting the Ultra Beasts is fun too in Ultra Space. It's one of the best mechanics that they've ever introduced that involves going somewhere else. Like for example, going to Kanto from Johto or something like that. It's visually appealing. The game, collecting circles isn't exactly mind-busting or anything like that, but it is fun to do, trying to get a high score. The enticing thing of the Ultra Beasts and the other legendary Pokemon from other games is a great draw to do it. Ultra Megalopolis, on the other hand, is a giant disappointment. And it really sucks that they tease us with people from the city and Pokemon from the city. Like, you get to learn Poipole is just a starter Pokemon in another universe that people just use, right? Isn't that so cool? I hope we get a Legends game about Megalopolis at some point. I think that'd be so cool. But anyway, you get to learn about all these things, and you just get this little tease, right, about this other world and all of these things going on, and then you get there and there's nothing. It's just a whole bunch of buildings you can't go into, and then you fight Necrozma and they all say, oh, thanks, you can leave now. Right? And I personally think that could have been a fun branching off point too, right? Where we do like in a have you guys seen Invasion of the Astro Monster, the Godzilla movie, uh, where the aliens pretend to need our help stopping Ghidorah, so they kidnap Godzilla and Rodan and bring them to their planet to help them fight Ghidorah. But then it turns out that Ghidorah and the aliens were working together the whole time, and they really brought Godzilla and Rodan there to brainwash them, and then they just use all three of them to try to attack us on Earth. That, I think, would be a fun story to do with an Ultra Megalopolis sort of thing, Megalopolis or whatever story, you know. Uh, One of their attempts to conquer us just got out of control, right? And they're like, "Oh, thanks for all your help, but you don't need to be here for any reason at all. We're not up to anything. Don't worry about it. Get out." Right? I think that would be kind of fun. Give us a little more of a vibe than just, "Oh, thanks so much. We don't have anything to offer or anything to show you. Goodbye." Uh, Very strange. Wasted potential, in my opinion. And unfortunately, Alola is a lot of wasted potential, in my opinion. So that's why it gets a 3 out of 5. Okay, so two of my regions here actually scored exactly the same after I tallied them up, so they're going to have to mog off. And the first one of them is Hoenn. Hoenn has a 3.5 out of 5 after everything's done. I'm using the Pokemon Emerald Hoenn because the other ones are just kind of okay. This is its best showing, and it's a really good one, so I wanted to use that. Hoenn is fun to explore for about 3/4 of the game. Literally badge 6 out of 8. And then once you get to that area, you're just stuck in a big giant ocean floating around. There's not a lot to do. There are some islets and there are some underwater areas, but they're not very rewarding to explore. And you wonder why they decided to emphasize that the more you play it. Sorry, guys, it's late at night. Just had a little bit of a yawn there. Excuse me. Waterfalls and HM you get in the game, but there are only one. I think there's only one notable waterfall in the big open water area that leads up to Evergrande City, right? Maybe the one in the Pokemon League too, right? And I guess it's two of those, but that's still not enough, right? You could have waterfall lagoons or coves or something around the waterfall or the big open ocean areas for you to explore, right? Seems like a another fun way to encourage the water exploration, but no, it just never happened. And it's too bad too, because it really brings down what is a really solid land portion for Hoenn. I really love the land part of it. I just don't get it. The gimmicks of this generation, if you will, are the abilities and double battles. Abilities were first introduced in this game, but they kept going. Obviously, they're a staple all the way through. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, I think, are the only games that don't have them since then. Uh, they're just an essential part. Oh, I guess Legends Arceus, right? They're just an essential part of the whole thing, right? And I guess Legends ZA wouldn't either. But point is, the mainline games, I don't think any of them have not had abilities since, right? And double battles too. Double battles are now the staple for competitive Pokemon, right? So those had huge impact and are a lot of fun and still seen to this day, right? Double battles completely change how Pokemon are used, and abilities also change some old Pokemon completely, some for the better, some for the worse, right? But they sure did change them. Um, I guess if you're to count the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire version of Hoenn, then the gimmick would be Mega Evolutions too. Generation 3, the Hoenn region's characters and culture are okay, but they're lacking in some places, right? Petalburg is just a small little city with nothing to it. Verdant Turf is pretty, has great music, but it's empty. And same thing with Fall Arbor. Why is it there, right? There's just no reason for those towns, really. Locales like Sudopolis and Fort Tree help remedy the issue, but it's still important to note Team Bagman, Team Aqua are a really cool concept, but they're too generic and they don't really go the places that would be fun for an idea like that to go. The "are you good or are you bad" sort of thing could be done better, right? But Hoenn redeems itself because the region has a whole bunch of secret areas to find, legendaries to hunt. There's the battle frontier in Emerald, and then the battle tower in Ruby and Sapphire, and they lazily put the Maison in Generation 6. And I know that the Frontier for Generation 4 was ported over to Johto, and I'm going to praise that decision. So let me explain why I find the Maison lazy comparatively. The battle tower was already in that area in Crystal, and the battle tower is still in the frontier when it's in Johto. So it's an evolution of a concept already established, right? Whereas the Maison only has several different formats of battle, like a battle tower, with no new forms, really. Well, I guess new to Hoenn, but not new to the series, like the Battle Frontier had when Emerald came out, right? So it's a regression, not a progression. Also, the characters are French coded and it's a Maison, whereas Hoenn is southeastern Japan, right? How many Maisons are there in Japan, right? It just feels like they just copy pasted. I wish they tried a little bit harder than that. But anyway, still fun to do if you like battling, right? I'm not trying to knock it too much. But the point is, Hoenn has quite a bit to do, and anyone should try it out. Also, I should mention very briefly, the secret bases are the most fun thing to do in Hoenn, in my personal opinion. I don't want to get too in depth to it, just because I don't want to spoil it for people, but you should definitely look into that stuff if you play any of these games, and you should do it for yourself because you will have a great time. So the other one that will be compared with Hoenn is Sinnoh. Sinnoh will be based on its platinum incarnation, right? This is to give it the best chance it possibly has. I think without the platinum stuff, Sinnoh's really down at the bottom. It just really stinks in Diamond and Pearl. It gets a 3.5 out of 5. Sinnoh's gimmick, if you will, is the physical special split. This radically altered how a lot of Pokemon played, both in the casual playthrough and in the competitive scene, right? Before this generation, a Pokemon's move was either physical or special based on its typing, right? So, for example, uh, a fire type move would always be special, right? So, Fire Punch was a special move in Generation 1, 2, and 3, right? So certain Pokemon like Alakazam and Gengar and things like that could actually take advantage of that. And were actually kind of better than they are now because they could take advantage of those things, right? Um, but the physical special split did tremendously benefit many physical attackers and some types, but it also hurt the utility of some special attackers. Like I mentioned before, the biggest thing that got hurt by this was the psychic type. The psychic type just really got hit hard by this. Pursuit became a more deadly move because of this. They removed Pursuit from the games later because of how dangerous it became because of the physical special split. I'm sorry, y'all. It's 1:30 in the morning. I'm very tired. So forgive me if I stutter a little bit here. So let's see here. The region itself is dense. There's much less water in Hoenn, but there's also a slower surfing speed. There are some moments where you're exploring stuff, even in Platinum, where I just kind of wish I was in Hoenn because you can actually move around in that game and get places faster, right? HMs are kind of a bother in Sinnoh. There are 8 of them that you have to use fairly consistently, which is just a little too much to juggle. I do appreciate the fact that they went for the let's not go to waste, right? So you get a lot of cut bushes, right? And you get a lot of strength puzzles, and right, but sometimes it's just really tedious because, like I was thinking about it earlier, like you need like a Tropius and a Bibarel at all times just to get around and do stuff sometimes, and it sucks, unfortunately. But the characters here are better. Um, they're not as good as say Alola even, but they're better than they are in Hoenn. The variety of environments, towns, cities, and landscapes do really help the region feel more alive than the characters do, but that's good, right? That's good environmental storytelling. That's always good to see. I do have to say though, the Pokemon choice here is a little lackluster, especially for fire types. But it is nice to see old monsters get facelifts. It's just like sometimes it's like Seeking and Whiscash are here, right, to hang out with Feebas and Magikarp, right? But then, yeah, you can't have Nidoking, right? It's just like, what am I going to use Seeking for? You know what I mean? I remember one of the young men with special needs that I watch. He watches the Pokemon anime, and there's a character in there called Paul, and Paul has an Ursaring, and I was very confused because Ursaring, you can't get him in Diamond and Pearl and Platinum, like at all, which is too bad, right? But yeah, it's just it's a little sparse. But that's not a bad thing. I think the new evolutions are really great too. Overall, there are a couple losers in there, but overall they're great. Oh, and special notice here to Rotom with all of the forms, right, becoming this crazy utility monster, right? It's really cool. You do a good job with that. Um, Another great thing is there's plenty to do and see in the region. There's another battle frontier. Uh, There's a post game island for you to check out. It's got a legendary in it. There are plenty of other legendaries for you to get in the game as well. There's an underground where you can like dig up treasure and stuff, and you can go into secret bases too. The secret bases are kind of a pain in the butt, though. They're not as fun as they are in Generation 3, but they are there. And there's really a lot to do in the game, so I highly recommend playing it. But it and Hoenn are tied with each other, so we gotta figure something out there. So it's time for a mog off. Hoenn and Sinnoh, they scored exactly 3.5 out of 5. One has to be third and the other has to be fourth. Let's see who will be who. Okay, so let's compare these two side by side, right? Hoenn's got better gameplay. It's more unique Pokemon, but a weaker showing overall. Worse characters, but a better story. Sinnoh gets a little too crazy for me with all the space time rewriting and stuff. I don't know. It's Pokemon. You just raise monsters and fight each other, right? The gimmick was more impactful for Hoenn with the abilities and double battles, right? They're always in every game now, sans that one time Let's Go Pikachu forsook only the abilities but kept double battles, right? The remakes were better for Hoenn, which is crazy because they got rid of the Battle Frontier, and that was the only thing I cared about when it came to the Hoenn region, really. I was super bummed when I learned they weren't going to be in there. Sinnoh has worse gameplay, but a better Pokemon pool and characters. The underground is more useful than secret bases, but it's not as fun, and the locations aren't as diverse. The secret bases just have more utility in terms of like customization, right? They're just more more fun to do in general. I'm just gonna say it. Not wandering around in the ocean for hours is super nice, but I do wish the HMs were a little less prevalent. You just constantly have to have Pokemon with HMs all the time, and it's kind of a chore because you're not able to actually have a team of 6 that you can use. You have to have like a Bibarel and a Tropius at all points just to be able to do every little thing. Uh, I do, however, have to say I think the vibe for Sinnoh is a little better. I like Hoenn's more, but Sinnoh's is a little stronger. It's got more of an atmosphere. It's very moody, comparatively. So after a little deliberation, I have decided that Hoenn is the winner of the Mogoff. It all comes down to gameplay, really. Generation 4 is very solid, and there are a lot of points in it that are better than Gen 3. But it's It's slow. It's so slow. Even when it's optimal with platinum, right? It's slow. You can just pick up Gen 3 and get started and head out. And it just makes it's too much of a difference for me to ignore. So with that out of the way, Sinnoh is now fourth and Hoenn is third, which is very fitting. So for number two, I've got Kanto with an H added this time, Tojo, like the falls, whatever you want to call this thing. It's got to be the Heart Gold and Soul Silver incarnation of this fused region primarily, which is a remake of Generation 2, but it adds so much to it, right? This only works as these two put together, and not as separate entities, because Kanto is so, it's where everything starts. It's so basic. It's the blueprint for everything else, right? It naturally scores low. There's no innovation because that's just how things started. Johto scores low too. That's mostly because Johto is just, I don't know. Um, uh, it's supposed to be the sequel. Um, it's supposed to be bigger and better, but Generation 1 is like a crutch for the game. I like Generation 2 a lot. Please don't mistake me. Very clearly, given how high I've put this, but it it just doesn't have its own identity, right? So this thing only survives by being one region thing. Okay, I know it's bending the rules a little bit, but it's hard to just talk about Johto on its own. Um, so I'm gonna give the fusion a 4 out of 5. Kanto would get a 2, and Johto would get a 1.5 on their own. They're fine, right? But they're vanilla and uninteresting given that they had a Game Boy to work with for visual fidelity, right? There wasn't a lot you could do with it. There's some cool stuff they did, like the Ruins of Alph really impressed me as a kid. I thought they were awesome. Same thing with the Pokemon Mansion, and the puzzle there with the statues and stuff is really cool. Don't mistake me, but they just didn't have the time to make it too complex at that point, right? Pokemon wasn't the juggernaut that it is now, right? um Very much still finding its footing. Anyway, for some compliments here, right? 16 gyms, 2 regions, 10 legendaries from the region. Heart Gold and Soul Silver add a whole bunch of legendaries from other regions to come in, and mythicals. I count them together in this for anybody who's curious. 251 local monsters, and most impressive of all, 2 whole name raiders. Make this region a lesson in excess, really. I mean, I don't know how they managed to fit both of the name raiders in there, but I can only imagine that they cut some of the best content that we would ever get in a Pokemon game just to fit another name raider in. That's inexcusable too, right? We should all just be angry about it. Let's find something else to be mad about. Let's be mad about 2 name raiders in this game. Can we all protest that? In all seriousness, though, the region isn't great, but it's not perfect. Well, it is great, but it's not great at the same time. That's the whole thing. Um, a lot of the region itself is super generic. Even every time they try to upscale it and make it more impressive, like even in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, Kanto, while it looks good because it's faithful and therefore it is done well, it's not impressive. There's not much to say about the Kanto region, right? And the same thing would be true for a Johto one too. So that's it really does hurt the identity. The Pokemon are fine. It's the regions themselves that are just kind of, and the characters too. They were still getting their footing with that kind of stuff, and it took them a while. If I can say anything about Pokemon, it's that it really wasn't until Generation 5 that characters really were remembered by me as characters and not just like he's this gym leader with these Pokemon, right? Um, but again, it's a good first showing and a good second showing too, but it's just not particularly special. There's nothing of note to mention for it. It's a little inconvenient to get money in these games due to the fact that you have to wait for trainers to call you to fight you outside of the Elite Four, right? And you also have to wait for gym leaders, which is a fun feature in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. You can rebattle the gym leaders with different teams, very much higher leveled teams, and that's cool. But you have to wait for the exact day and the exact time to meet them somewhere, at which point they will then tell you what times of days or day you can call them for a rematch. You cannot skip. If you skip time using your DS clock, it does not count that at all, and will reset and make you do it again. So it, you know, getting things done in those games, especially like extra content, is just a little difficult to do. It can be a little frustrating. Waiting 24 hours for the apricorn balls is not fun either. There's really no reason for that. Um, you know, it, it's just it's a little too boring sometimes. There's really no other way around it, right? But again, you get so much here, right? It's very hard to complain with how much content there is in these games, especially compared to other ones. And when you add Heart Gold and Soul Silver, right? First you have the post game battle with Red, the original player character in all versions of the Johto games, right? But after that's done, you get stuff in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. You get stuff like some more starters, legendary Pokemon from other regions, the ability to trade with gym leaders and important characters like Champion Steven Stone from the Hoenn region, right? It's really, really, really cool what they've added in, and it's very hard to ignore just how much of it there is. So I highly recommend you check it out, despite my protests earlier, right? I really do like it. It's just don't expect yourself to be wowed in the way that you were by some of the other regions, just given how I don't know, how flat and sterile everything has to be because of how early in the franchise this is. So number one in the series is Unova. It's not even a contest, really. Unova has very little working against it. I think the thing that I would say I'm least impressed about with Unova is just the locale itself. Um, I live in the American East Coast, right? Unova takes a lot of inspiration from New York State, New York City specifically, and parts of the city, right? And those biomes are very similar to the ones that I live by, right? And that's nothing against them. I love them. I love going out and walks in the fall and running into animals like deer and foxes and bears, stuff like that. I don't particularly enjoy meeting the bears, but they're there, right? Um, so that's fun and everything. But for Pokemon, it was just kind of like, I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm sure some Japanese people feel the same way about Kanto or Johto or Hoenn, right? Or Sinnoh. Um, but again, even then, they feel a little more fantastical than Unova does a lot. Unova just feels like a park, in a lot of places, and not like a big national park or something like that, like your public park where you see a whole bunch of people. There are a whole bunch of kids on the swing set and stuff like that. And there are, of course, major exceptions, right? Like the Chargestone Cave, which is one of my favorite caves in Pokemon. There's the desert out in Route 4, and well, what's it called? Twist Mountain, right? Dragon's Ball Tower is obviously a giant fantasy tower out in the middle of like Manhattan, which is hilarious. But in general, it's very what I consider very pedestrian in terms of environment. I wish there was a little more flair to it, but that's also bias on my part because I'm used to seeing stuff like that. And it was also cool to see that stuff too. Don't get me wrong. I love the fact that it was represented, but I think it's the weakest part about Unova overall. Um, with that out of the way, though, it gets a 4.5 out of 5. It's nearly perfect, right? There's some flaws here and there, but they're very minute in comparison, right? Um, so yeah, so like I said here, how do you do better than this region as Pokemon game designers, right? This was the devs' passion project, from what I've heard from people, and boy, it shows really. Unova's characters haven't been matched yet in the series. There's just so much emotion behind what's going on with stuff. So many minor characters have stuff that you learn about that just enriches the world. You help people accomplish little jobs and goals. Sorry, my computer just kind of twitched for a second there in my hand. Um, yeah, you help people do little jobs and stuff like get a band together, and you can find areas where these people hang out. I just recently learned about an area in Black 2 and White 2 that I didn't even know about. And in my next playthrough, I'm going to go check out, right? And I thought for sure I knew every square inch of that game, right? There's just so much to do, right? The season system is amazing, allowing the different parts of the region to transform in such ways. Like in the autumn, you can jump into the leaf piles and find stuff, and there are empty areas in the winter that you can then explore that have their own stuff going on. The Pokemon changing because of the seasons is awesome. The giant ice areas in Icarus City in the winter, right? It's so much fun. There's nothing like it in the rest of the series, and it's because the devs were passionate about it. I wish they were given more time to do something like this. Truth be told, I would love if we got a Black and White 3 that was just a 2D, 3D game like this one, right? I think that would be incredible. Let's see here. Yeah, it's so easy to make money in these games with all the daily battles against musicians. Ooh, and sports people and people working at the cafes and the Game Freak people. And I think you can fight Alder daily in Black 2 and White 2, and you can fight Cynthia in the summer. Like, there's just so many opportunities. You learn so much about the characters and everything. In Black 2 and White 2, they've got both the Tree Hollow and the city, and you've got the Battle Subway, right? So you've basically got two different facilities. Like, holy crap, it's a third of a battle frontier, right? On top of everything else, you get a third of a battle frontier as opposed to the sixth of one you get normally, right? That's just so awesome. um, Seriously though, sometimes it's kind of intimidating starting these games when I've got a lot going on, and I just say to myself, "You should play this game." I'm like, I don't know, man. I've got a lot of work to do, right? I don't know that I should, but it's so much fun when you have the time to actually do it. Um, and what really sold me on Unova, personally, was the fact that they made a sequel to the Black and White games in the same generation, right? And normally I would just feel like this is just blatant, like cheap You're just trying to get us to buy the same thing over again, right? Like, and you put it in two versions. How could you do that? No, they made direct sequels in the same generation, and those sequels made Unova feel fresh, which was the same game I had played beforehand, right? It was insane. Like that's such great design. How do you do that, right? So I absolutely recommend that you guys play the Unova games if you can, right? I know that the DS game prices are just crazy expensive, right? I don't recommend paying that much money for a Nintendo DS cartridge. Um, but I do recommend trying them in some way, right? They're really a lot of fun. You won't regret playing them. So anyway, that's my number one choice, Unova. Anyway, with that out of the way, thank you all very much. Hope you have a great weekend. Let me know what your particular favorites are in the regions. I'd love to hear what your lists are for the top five. Um, Please tell me how wrong I am below in the comments too. I'm sure that I've forgotten some crucial details, but that's what I remember. So since we had to have a little mog off in the middle, the final list is Unova, Tojo, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Alola. I do not own Pokemon, Nintendo, Game Freak, the Pokemon Company International, any related entities, companies, products, all rights to the respective owners. Uh, the maps there from scans from old strategy guides and guide booklets that came with games and stuff like that. Anyway, see y'all in the next video. Have a great weekend. Let your family know that you love them.